What's up, everyone? How's it going? Today is June 15th of 2023, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2023 Stanley Cup Final champion, Las Vegas Golden Knights, who wrapped up the championship with a Game 5 victory over the Florida Panthers earlier this week. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about a whole lot of synchronicity and numerology that connects to Vegas's victory. If you're new to this channel, we focus on the language of Gematria, which takes the alphabetic order and assigns a numeric value to each letter. The ordinal method, which is the most basic, branches off into the base 4 ciphers, which we'll view as we go in this video. And when you combine this language with dates on the calendar, you find that something very strange is going on in this world. So first, let's start about the topics of today's video. Now, Las Vegas was the scene of the largest mass shooting in United States history back in 2017, when 60 people were allegedly killed during a country music festival. And no question that their Stanley Cup victory is connected to this event. Remember, the Golden Knights had their first home game in Vegas just 9 days after this shooting, and the team scored like 4 goals in the first 10 minutes of that game. It was quite a scene. We'll also talk about how this connects to the numerology of Frederick Stanley, who is the namesake of the Stanley Cup. We're also going to talk about how this connects to the death of John Madden a couple of years ago. Madden won the Super Bowl with the Raiders, and the Raiders now play in the city of Las Vegas. Now, the Vegas shooting was across the street from the Luxor Hotel. You know, this pyramid that was right across the street from the festival. And this Luxor pyramid is relevant to the last part of this video that I'll be talking about, as I may blow your mind and explain how this is all connected to a total solar eclipse whose greatest eclipse point occurs near Luxor, Egypt. You'll see that's the closest large city to this eclipse in 2027. So there's been a lot going on with Las Vegas in the media recently. Think about how during the Stanley Cup Finals, we got this news story telling us that aliens had potentially landed in Las Vegas. And of course, Nevada has always been associated with aliens, all the way back to the Roswell landings back in the year 47. Now, what's important to understand about this story is that it was most likely by the numbers. You'll see that it was May 1st, 2023, when police responded to this incident. Now, May 1st fell 43 days before the Golden Knights won the Cup in Las Vegas, Nevada. But if you read the story closer, you find that the landing actually occurred on April 30th. And April 30th is written 4/30, a lot like the number 43. In the standard reduction method of Gematria, where every double-digit number is reduced to a single digit, Las Vegas, Nevada sums to 43. Now, when we look at Las Vegas and flying objects, airplanes that fly out of Las Vegas come from Harry Reid International Airport. Now, this used to be called McCarran Field, but the name was changed in December of 2021. Exactly 2 weeks after this airport was renamed, Harry Reid died. You'll see that he died on December 28th of 2021. That's the same exact date that John Madden died. And again, John Madden coached the Raiders to the Super Bowl, the Raiders, the other major sports team in Las Vegas. And think about how this is all relevant to John Madden, who, for his entire life, had a fear of flying. He would take his own coach bus around the country, literally would not stand on an airplane. So the fact that we have this riddle with the airport being renamed after a guy who died the same day as John Madden, it's very wild. And for those of you who were watching my work back in 2021, you may remember I was talking about the potential of the Raiders going to the Super Bowl in 2023. And unfortunately, it turns out I was looking at the wrong sport. This was all pointing to a Vegas championship in hockey, not football. But let's all link this back to the Stanley Cup. Notice how John Madden's middle name is Earl. Frederick Stanley, who the cup was named after, was also the Earl of Derby. So let's get started on the numerology here. In reverse reduction, Las Vegas, Nevada sums to 83. And this is an important number because the Vegas Golden Knights franchise was first awarded on June 22nd of 2016 when it was approved by a league owners meeting. That means the franchise is currently 83 months old. And furthermore, in the Latin method of Gematria, which I consider to be the most important, this uses the ancient Latin order. It's also called Agrippa's key. And here, Vegas sums to 803, which in numerology represents the number 83. Now, as I mentioned, there's a strong eclipse riddle here. So we'll also talk a lot about the moon. Notice how moon sums to 83 with capital letters. The Vegas Golden Knights are currently coached by a man named Butch Cassidy. And I thought it was interesting that Butch Cassidy also played in the NHL, drafted in the year 83. Now, Vegas almost won this game by a score of 8-3. However, they scored one late final goal to make it 9-3. And we'll see again how this is all connected to Lord Stanley of Preston, whose name equals 93. But back to this 83, a number which is so integral to Vegas. 83 is the 23rd prime number. Again, Las Vegas equals 23, and now here they've won the Stanley Cup in the year 23. We'll talk about how this is all connected to John Madden. The name Madden equals 23. Vegas also won the championship 23 days after Lord Stanley would have turned 66,600 days old. And we'll talk about the moon, 666, how these numbers are coded in. But also think about how the word hockey sums to 23, just like Las Vegas, who won the hockey championship in the year 23. Hockey also equals 67 in ordinal, and that happens to be the age that Lord Stanley was when he died. The language of Gematria is often believed to have originated in Hebrew or Greek. And in the ancient Hebrew language, notice how Las Vegas, Nevada yields us this 223. This also represents our current year, 2023. The number 223 was very significant in the Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas back in 2017. And the Mandalay Bay, check this out, 43 stories. We opened the video talking about Las Vegas, Nevada, summing to 43. The word casino has English gematria of 223. This cipher seen on the right side of your screen, structured the same as Latin, but uses the current 26-letter alphabetic order. And on the date of the shooting from the casino, the Mandalay Bay, which opened on March 2nd of 1999, was exactly a span of 223 months old. The Golden Knights played their first home game 9 days later, which was 223 days after Mandalay Bay's anniversary. Now, 223 is the 48th prime number. The Las Vegas shooting fell on a date with numerology of 48. 48 also found in the gematria of Vegas's current coach, Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy equals 48. His last name also 480 in Sumerian. Now these numbers 223 and 48, these connect to the moon. In that same Hebrew standard cipher, the moon sums to 223. In English, Luna, the Latin name for the moon, equals 48. Again, 223 is the 48th prime number. And the geometry of the moon was heavily coded into this season for the Golden Knights. Notice how Vegas scored 272 goals this year, which actually wasn't that great. It was kind of middle of the road, which is surprising because they were the number 1 seed in the West. Well, the number 272 is what we get when we divide the diameter of the moon by the diameter of the Earth. 0.72 repeating. Excuse me, 0.272 repeating. The Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup at the T-Mobile Arena 2,072 days after their first game in that arena. The Golden Knights became a franchise 207 months and 20 days after the opening of the Mandalay Bay Casino. So the Las Vegas shooting in 2017 fell on October 1st. And this brings us to the next section of this post. October 1st is written as 10:01 or perhaps 10:1 when we write it out. And this shooting technically occurred in Paradise, Nevada, which is south of Las Vegas on the south end of the Strip. In Latin Gematria, Paradise, Nevada equals 1001. And isn't it interesting that the man who was the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metro PD at the time of the shooting, Joe Lombardo, just became the governor of Nevada back in January to start the year 2023. Now, this isn't totally unheard of for a sheriff to become governor, but it is pretty rare. And here you have the guy who oversaw all of the Vegas shooting operations, now in charge of the entire state. Well, on the date of the Las Vegas shooting, that was Joe Lombardo's 1,001st day in office as the sheriff. Las Vegas's first home game was also 1,010 days after he became sheriff, and that game was held on October 10th, or 10/10. Vegas finally won the Stanley Cup 101 months after Lombardo became the sheriff. Check out how the word casino sums to 101. So does Mandalay Bay Casino in reduction. This is another significant number to John Madden, who won only one Super Bowl, and that was Super Bowl 11. The digits 1-1. John Madden was even born on the 101st day of a leap year. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Knights defeated the Panthers. Panthers equals 101 using the alphabetic order. In the reverse alphabetic order, Knights equals 101. The Las Vegas shooting fell 101 days after the anniversary of the Knights being awarded a franchise. That shooting was also 264 days before the Knights' anniversary, and in Latin, Knights equals 264. 101 is also the gematria of the word moon in reverse using capital letters, moon summing to 101. Now, if you think about 1 hour and 1 minute on a clock, this is like 61 minutes. The Mandalay Bay Casino, which opened on March 2nd, opened on the 61st day of the year. And check out how Mandalay Bay Casino equals 61, so does casino. Joe Lombardo, 61. The shooting was at the Harvest Festival by an assassin, which both equals 61. Here we're talking about how this connects to John Earl Madden. And we'll touch on the John F. Kennedy riddle as well. John equals 61, so does John Earl Madden, who won Super Bowl 11 in Pasadena. Both of those also summing to 61. 61 is another prime number, the 18th prime. Madden won that Super Bowl by 18 points. And check out how Vegas sums to 18 in reduction. Vegas's coach, Bruce Cassidy, is nicknamed Butch after Butch Cassidy. And you'll see that Butch also equals 18. So does JFK. And Vegas this year, they were the 1 seed, and they defeated the 8 seed Florida Panthers. Speaking of Butch, Butch equals 18 like Vegas. Butch was the 18th overall selection in the NHL draft. Now, the number 108 is very significant to the sun and the moon and this eclipse code. In Gematria, both full moon and geometry have double values of 108. Both the moon and the sun are 108 times their own diameter from the Earth. In fact, the sun is also approximately 108 Earths long. Using the reduction method, the man who the Stanley Cup is named after, Frederick Arthur Stanley, his name equals 108. If you measure from the death of John Madden to the date that Vegas won the Stanley Cup, it was exactly 18 lunar phases, or full moons. Now, we talked a lot about 61 and how this was big in the Vegas shooting. Well, the 61st prime number is 283, and it's certainly no coincidence that the Vegas Golden Knights played their first home game on the 283rd day of the year, which also had numerology of 57. In ordinal, the word moon equals 57, like eclipse in Hebrew. And think about how the moon has a 57-degree range of declination around the plane of the sun. Now, if you measure from the date that John Madden won the Super Bowl to the date that Vegas began playing in Las Vegas, you get exactly 504 lunar phases. And check out all of the items that sum to 44. Vegas equals 44. So does their coach Butch, 54. Frederick Stanley was the Earl of Derby. And notice how Derby equals 54. The Vegas shooting was carried out by a man named Paddock, which equals 54. JFK equals 54. So does the moon. Vegas is known as Sin City, which equals 54. And Paddock's full name, Stephen Craig Paddock, also equals 540. And when Vegas won the Stanley Cup, they did so with their 54th playoff victory. So we talked about Harry Reid Airport and how this used to be called McCarran Field after a guy named Pat McCarran. Well, McCarran died in 54, right? And then he got the Vegas airport named after him. So that definitely stood out to me as well. So let's talk about this 54 a little more in depth. Now, the Las Vegas shooting occurred at a festival called the Route 91 Harvest. Now, if you look at the date that this festival began, I'm going to do a little date measurement with you. The shooting was on October 1st, but the festival began the previous Friday, September 29th of 2017. Now, if you add 54 days to that date, you get November 22nd. This was the date that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. JFK killed on November 22nd. And in 2017, this was the 54th anniversary of the JFK assassination. So think about this. 54 days before the 54th anniversary of JFK dying is when we got this festival in Vegas. So I hope that explains a good chunk of those connections there. All right, so let's go back and talk a little bit about Lord Stanley here. Now, notice how the word cup equals 145 in Satanic. The Vegas Golden Knights are owned primarily by a man named Bill Foley. And check out how the name Bill Foley sums to 145, which matches Golden Knights and Lord Stanley. Golden Knights and Lord Stanley both also sum to 62, and the Golden Knights won Stanley's Cup on a date with primary numerology of 62. In the reverse alphabetic order, the Stanley Cup equals 182. Lord Stanley died in the town of Holwood in England, and Holwood equals 1082. This year, Lord Stanley would be 182 years old. Also in the reverse method, the name John Madden equals 182. And if you thought the connections to Madden were rough, check this out. If you measure from the death of John Madden, remember his middle name was Earl, like the Earl of Derby. The Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup exactly 1 year and 24 weeks after the death of John Earl Madden, whose name equals 124. In fact, this was the Vegas Golden Knights' 88th playoff game when they won the Stanley Cup, 54 and 34. You get 88. Their team is called the Knights, which equals 88. And this is all in tribute to John Madden, whose name equals 88. In fact, in Latin Gematria, John Earl Madden equals 888. And remember, the first Madden football game came out on June 1st, or 6/1, of the year 88. What's also interesting about this 88 is that the name Trump equals 88. And of course, he's been in the news a lot lately, being charged for classified docs again. On the date that the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup, Donald Trump was a span of exactly 77 years old. And when you look up John Madden, you find that he actually wore number 77 in the NFL. And when he won the Super Bowl 11, it was in the year 77. All right, so the next part of this is really good. And it has to do with the number 16. Lord Stanley was the 16th Earl of Derby. And notice how the name Stanley is a supermatch with the number 16 in the language of Gematria. You get the same values across all methods, 96, 93, 39, and 33. Stanley was born in London, UK, which sums to 106 in ordinal. And he was the Earl of Derby. Earl equals 106 Latin. Well, when John Earl Madden won the Super Bowl, he did so on a date with primary numerology of 106. And when you look at the 2022-23 NHL season, you find that this was the 106th season of play, or operation as it says. Now, I actually thought it was the 106th Stanley Cup, but I almost wonder if they changed this recently. But either way, it's the 106th season for the NHL. And look how old JFK would have been when Vegas won the Cup. 106 years and 16 days old. They also won the Stanley Cup 106 days before Lord Stanley's birthday. Now, Lord Stanley's birthday... Let me reframe this here. Before his birthday. Wait. My bad, guys. It was... Yeah, Yeah, I got this wrong. It was the shooting that was 106 days before Lord Stanley's birthday. So my bad. I don't know why I missed that. But this was the Las Vegas shooting. It was 106 days before Stanley's birthday, or 15 weeks and 1 day. And that 15 weeks and 1 day reflects Lord Stanley's birthday, which is the 15th of January, written 15/1. In fact, when Stanley died, he died 151 days after his birthday. This is similar to the date that the Luxor Las Vegas was founded, October 15th, written 10/15 or 15/10, very similar to 15/1. Now, his birthday can also be written as 1/15, January 15th. And when the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup, it was a span of exactly 115 years after Lord Stanley died. That's right, Lord Stanley died on June 14th, which is also Trump's birthday. To win the Cup, the Knights had to beat the Panthers. Panthers equals 115. The word killing has double gematria of 115. And you may remember that the killing of JFK by an assassin in a warehouse fell on a date with 115 numerology, and both assassin and warehouse sum to 115 in gematria. When John F. Kennedy was the president, he promised the United States that before the end of the decade, he would take us to the moon, and that mankind would land foot on the moon. And it just so happens that, according to NASA anyway, we accomplished this just a few months before the end of the decade. We had this moon landing in the year 69. So JFK is very closely associated with the moon. If you measure from the assassination of JFK to the Las Vegas shooting, you find that these events were separated by 666 lunar phases. But what's more interesting is that this is also exactly 720 sidereal months, or lunar orbits. And the number 720 is incredibly significant to the moon. In fact, Apollo 11, the first crewed moon landing, was said to have landed on the moon on July 20th. Landing date, July 20th of 1969. The date written 7/20. The Las Vegas shooting was in Paradise, Nevada, which sums to 720. And you can pause it on this screen if you'd like. The number 720, very integral to the geometry of the moon and the sun. Think about how the sun and moon are both 360 degrees. 360 plus 360 is 720. Golden ratio equals 720. So does the word eclipse. And think about how the name Golden Knights has golden in it. Well, the diameter of the moon can be solved using the golden ratio in accordance with the diameter of the Earth. So back to this 666 lunar phases. In Latin gematria, when you write out 666, it sums to 2083, whereas the moon equals 283. If you don't include the word and, 666 gives us gematria of 2038. And if you look up the average distance to the moon, we find that it's approximately 238,000 miles. The number 666 is an upside-down 999, and the moon equals 90 and 99, just like Sin City, the nickname for Las Vegas where the shooting occurred. Now, 666 is such an important number to the moon, I have a whole PDF file on it that you can find linked in my post. The name of the shooter in Las Vegas was Stephen Paddock, whose name equals 60 and 66. The Vegas Golden Knights head coach also has gematria of 60 and 66. Stephen Paddock was born on a date with 66 numerology, and the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup a span of 66 days after his birthday. Frederick Stanley was the Earl of Derby, which equals 666 in Sumerian gematria. 666 is significant to the mathematics of the circle, which equals 666 in Latin gematria. If you multiply 6 times 6 times 6, you get a product of 216. And in the alphabetic order, this is the gematria of mathematics of the circle. The Vegas Golden Knights were created in the year 2016, which represents 216. The moon has an equatorial diameter of exactly 2,160 miles, which again represent the digits 216. Frederick Stanley died on the date of a lunar eclipse, June 14th of 1908. You see this? There was a partial lunar eclipse that belonged to Saros 109. Of course, these astrology elements on the calculator are available to paid members of the site. When Frederick Stanley died, he did so 216 days before his birthday. And he was an Earl. Earl equals 216. Meanwhile, John F. Kennedy was born on May 29th, which is the date that leaves 216 days on the calendar. When the Vegas shooting broke out, a singer named Jason Aldean was on stage. And if you measure from his birthday to the date of the shooting, you get 216 days. The Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup exactly 216 weeks before a total solar eclipse that passes directly over the city of Luxor, Egypt. And remember, the Vegas shooting was across the street from the Luxor Hotel. So here again is a look at this eclipse. The greatest eclipse point. No large city is closer than Luxor, Egypt. So let's talk more about this eclipse, because this really brings up this whole riddle. It makes everything make sense. Now, this eclipse of the year 2027 is when this happens. This belongs to Saros series 136. And if you watch my work a lot, you know that this is a Saros series I talk about frequently. Now, let's quickly talk about what the Saros is. The Saros is a period of exactly 223 synodic months, or lunar orbits. And at any given time, there's approximately 40 active Saros cycles. And eclipses from the same Saros occur 223 lunations apart. This is, of course, relevant to everything that we talked about before, right? Las Vegas, Nevada equals 223. Here we are in the year 2023, and 223 was coded into the Las Vegas shooting almost religiously. So this eclipse, the one over Luxor, Egypt, belongs to Saros series 136, and I believe this is the most significant Saros series in existence. This Saros series started in the year 1360, a lot like the number 136. And if you were in the Western Hemisphere when this began, it was still the 13th of June. So it was a lot like 13/6 of 1360. And that's when Solar Saros 136 began. A lot of you guys are familiar with the Jesuits. Notice how the Jesuits equals 136. The Jesuits were founded just 3 days before an eclipse from this cycle. So if you go from September 27th, 1940, that was just 3 days before an eclipse from 136. So all of the eclipses you're looking at, separated by 223 lunations. Well, let's fast forward to the most recent eclipse from this series, July 22nd of 2009. So that eclipse is seen on the left of your screen. The eclipse over Luxor, Egypt is seen on the right side of your screen. And here's a little look at these two paths on Google Earth. So this one passed over Luxor, Egypt, right? But look at this one from 2009. This eclipse passed directly over the city of Wuhan, China. Now, this was a total solar eclipse. And during a total solar eclipse, this is the only time that you can see the sun's corona, or upper atmosphere. And supposedly the coronavirus came from Wuhan, or so we're told. Anyway, look at the date that the Vegas Knights won the Stanley Cup. It was the 13th of June, or 13/6. And in the alphabetic order, Stanley Cup equals 136. Stanley Cup also has matching gematria with solar eclipse. Finally, Las Vegas won the Cup 86 lunar phases after they were awarded a franchise. In ordinal, Las Vegas equals 86, like Luna with caps. And to win the Cup, they had to defeat the Florida Panthers, which also sums to 86, and the state of Florida has matching Latin gematria with moon. Alright guys, that'll do it for this video. Thanks to everybody who gutted it out to the end. I hope it was certainly worth it. Peace, love, God bless. If you'd like to know more information, please check the links below, particularly if you'd like to support the work. See ya!